Harrell.
Introduce you to Libertarian candidate Casey Copeland. He's running as a Libertarian. He's running for the State House, District 80. Casey, welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Why did you decide to throw your hat in the ring and run for this particular House seat?
Paul, I have been on and off involved in politics for 20 years or so. Back in '98, I won a spot on the Washington County Quorum Court, spent two terms there, and then decided to go to law school and start families and start a career.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of years ago, actually, while I was in law school, watching how the federal government was expanding, watching then under the Obama administration how it kept expanding and how the states started to follow, I just decided that government is growing at unprecedented rates. We are giving over more and more private tasks to government agencies, and that is just a cost and a path that I just don't think that we can go down as a state or as a nation. So my small government inclinations, my limited government inclinations, and my inclination for government to control spending, which means that they don't tax us as much, led me to jump into this race this year.
That sounds like a great reason. Talk about where you kind of got your libertarian philosophy from. I mean, was it in law school that you realized that more liberty is better?
Well, just some of that, and then just getting out and getting out on my own, starting a family, and opening up a small office of my own, and just living life, kind of led me to that conclusion. It was really in 2006 when I joined the party after watching the federal government decide to bail out so many private corporations with our money. I just decided that both parties appeared to be parties of big government, and that just wasn't what I believed. I was a Republican when I was on the Quorum Court, and that's when I thought that the Republican Party really was a party of small, limited government. And just over time, my eyes opened up, and I decided that they weren't. And I decided to join the Libertarian Party because their principles really are about small, limited government and more freedom for consumers and taxpayers and just people in general.
Why do you think it's, for somebody who, like you said, who thought that those ideals were in the Republican Party? I mean, they put limited government back in the platform. Recently, the Republicans did here in Arkansas. Of course, it did get taken out, which was weird. Why do you think it's so hard for Republicans to actually limit government the way the platform says?
Well, I think once you become a party in power, there is, I guess, an expectation to run government. And I think that once you're in that power and have that authority and that expectation, you want people to see you running government efficiently and properly. And for some reason, the Republicans have convinced themselves that means helping people and spending more money and shifting taxes around to make it look like they're cutting taxes. And I think it's just an influence of power and authority that creeps in, that kind of clouds the way that they really should be looking at what government should and shouldn't do and how to make things better for consumers and taxpayers and people.
We're talking with Casey Copeland. He's a Libertarian candidate for District 80. Tell us about the geographic boundaries of District 80. Whereabouts is that?
Well, it is basically all of western Washington County and down into northwestern Crawford County. The cities that it includes are Prairie Grove, Lincoln, and Cedarville, and then all the small little communities and farms and spots in between and around. The northern boundary is just west of Johnston, and then the southern boundary is just basically south of Uniontown.
And the current occupant of that seat is Republican State Representative Charlene Fight, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
And there's three of us in this race. It's her, myself, and a Democrat by the name of Lou Sharp. So it's a three-way race this year for District 80.
Three-way race.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Monday to everybody out there. Thanks so much for being with us. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine here. If you want to sound off on the program, you can do so, 870-275-9799. You can also leave us, a message in the comments over at facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News, or go over to our YouTube page and do the same thing there. Subscribe. Click the little bell for notifications, if you don't mind. We got a great show for you on this Monday. We're going to talk some national news here in just a moment. Talk a little bit about President Trump. Is the Russiagate situation the new WMD, non-existent story, scandal, whatever you want to say? Remember when everybody said the Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction? That'll be interesting. Also, I want to talk a little bit about issue number 1 that's coming up on the ballot. We're all going to be voting on it. Issue 1 has to do with so-called tort reform. I've been referring to it as the bad tort reform law, and there's one group who is now actively speaking out against it, and it's not anything new. The Family Council has been speaking out against issue 1 since 2017 when they lobbied to defeat it unsuccessfully. And now there's all these accusations against them, and I've got a little bit to say about that, because this isn't the first time we've seen the establishment go berserk when you disagree with them. If you depart from their groupthink and you are a conservative organization and you're now defining conservatism in a different way than they're defining it, it makes everybody really nervous, and it actually exposes an extremist point of view. I used that on my personal Facebook page, and I used it intentionally. I used it thoughtfully and intentionally, and boy, did it get a strong reaction. Those of you who were watching that, you know exactly what I mean. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, at the top of the hour, we're going to be talking about the big news over at conduitnews.com. That's all I'll say about that. Most people will figure it out. Also, at the bottom of the next hour, I want to introduce you to Dr. Michael Busler. Michael Busler is a policy analyst, economics expert. He's a professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. He's been a featured columnist at Newsmax, LifeZet, and townhall.com. I want to talk to him a little bit about how last week in the media, the mainstream media, we started to see a shift in, I don't know, I would call it damage control. I'd be interested to hear what he has to call it. This shift had to do with the economy being so good, or it's getting to the point where it's resonating with the people that if the economy is good, then they tend to approve of the job that the president is doing. You see the economic numbers. That's been a big controversy recently with Candace Owens saying that, look, black support for President Donald Trump, according to some polls, has doubled from last year to this year. So there was a shift in the mainstream media narrative last week where they're trying to credit President Obama with Donald Trump's accomplishments and actions. And that's why I wanted to have Dr. Michael Busler on to talk a little bit about that. So we'll do all of that today. Let's get to, speaking of President Trump, this headline was on the front page of Breitbart this morning when I watched it, or when I read it. U.S. Steel to invest $750 million at Indiana plant thanks to Trump tariffs. We are experiencing a renaissance. John Binder. I'm going to say it's Binder. U.S. Steel has announced they will invest $750 million at their 110-year-old steel manufacturing plant known as Gary Works in Gary, Indiana. Not Louisiana, Paris, France, New York, or Rome, but Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana. My home sweet home. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. And so Gary Works in Gary, Indiana, crediting President Trump's protective tariffs on steel imports. What was once the largest steel mill in the world will now get a $750 million facelift thanks to Trump's 25% tariff on all imported steel into the United States, designed to protect American industries and jobs from being outsourced. In a statement this week, U.S. Steel executives said they would be revitalizing the Indiana plant, which employs about 3,800 American workers. While U.S. Steel executives say they are not yet planning to increase the number of jobs at the Indiana plant, U.S. Steel Corp. President and CEO David Burritt said the company is experiencing a renaissance because of Trump's tariffs. Quote, "We are pleased to be making this significant investment at Gary Works, which will improve the facility's environmental performance, bolster our competitiveness, and benefit the local community for years to come. We are experiencing a renaissance at U.S. Steel." Now, of course, we know that there are, I would remind you, I know, we've got the soybean situation going on here. China's going to have to buy soybeans. I did see a very, very anti-Trump article over the weekend, though, on the soybean situation, saying that in response, Russia is going to give China all of this farmland so they can grow soybeans. I'm thinking, really? I mean, I know Russia's got some fertile land, but soybeans need a lot of humidity, and they like it real steamy, and I'm thinking, I mean, where is this land? It better not be in Siberia. I mean, you're going to have some issues. It was extremely anti-Trump. But the bottom line is they got to have soybeans. China's going to buy U.S. soybeans. If it means they have to go through a third party, then they'll do it. Right now, I mean, again, here are the numbers. You've got a $40 billion a year industry, $20 billion in exports. The Chinese are stealing $600 billion in intellectual property. You have the FBI, the CIA. And we've gone over all this, but they're saying China's the threat. FBI's got investigations in all 50 states about Chinese economic activity and what they're doing to this country. So really and truly, it's a big deal. Now, I mean, you got the steel situation, which is a national security situation. We have to be able to build our tanks and our planes out of our own materials. We got to be able to do that here within the continental United States. I think everybody knows that. You can't build you can't build airplanes out of soybeans. This is a truth. So it certainly is a give and take. Now, listen, I'm no economic expert when it comes to tariffs. In conservative circles, tariffs are supposed to be a bad thing. However, I'm amazed, and this is what I've realized. I've come to the conclusion that there has been, over the years, a vast amount of underreporting about the trade situation and the, whether it's trade deficits or whether the way President Trump describes it is just really bad trade deals. They just have gone underreported. And I think that's because largely Democrats, when they got into power, and Republicans, when they got into power in D.C., they supported this type of globalization. And what it really is, from what I can see, and I know they're going to say, no, it was free trade, but what I can see, some of these deals that our leaders have made have essentially just been, over the long term, when you look at the jobs that have left and everything else, to me it just seems like a redistribution of wealth. I mean, I know that's what we first really heard of, that term, redistribution of wealth, with Barack Obama. that's when conservatives, started to say, wait a second, that's just a fancy way of saying let's put all of our money into one pot and divide it up equally. Let's have the governor, or the government rather, be the arbiter of who, gets to do this or that. And it's socialism for sure, or microwave communism, or whatever you want to call it. Redistribution of wealth. We need to redistribute the wealth. It's ridiculous. Well, that's essentially what some of these trade deals, from what I can tell, have done. They have essentially taken American jobs and redistributed them to these other countries. Because why? Well, from the left, they would say, well, America is imperialist, and we've taken advantage of all these countries, and there's so much more bad in America than there is good. And or some people that are just like, well, because America's not perfect, and because we're prosperous, then we owe everybody else everything. But then you have the other side that would just say, no. This is a way for corporations to get more and more money. We don't really care about national borders. We don't really care about nationalism. We don't really care about the people in America, the middle class. We're willing to sacrifice the middle class and let it dwindle and shrink so that we can get bigger profits in the long run. And so that's why we need these trade deals with other countries. You see what I'm saying? On both sides of the aisle, it's like, and that's why I've realized, because I'm just now figuring all of this out, and I've been doing this almost 9 years. I'm just now figuring out, wow, there weren't ever that many reports about how bad some of these deals were. I mean, you could find some stuff about NAFTA, yeah, but anyway, it's now being brought to the forefront, and it's interesting because it's an issue that a lot of people didn't know a lot about. President Trump using his bully pulpit, now everybody's talking about it, right? And now everybody's seeing that, hey, look, yeah, you put the trade war with China in place, right? You do this. And now guess what? China's economy is, according to reports, flailing. There are cracks within the loyalty apparatus of the Communist Party, yada, yada, yada. China delegation's coming to Washington, D.C. at the end of this month, and they're going to restart negotiations because they don't like these tariffs. What's Donald Trump's goal? He wants to operate on a level playing field. Now that President Trump has put these tariffs in place, he's operating from a position of strength because China wants to be in our market. The European Union wants to be in our market. They want to sell us stuff. Anyway, it's amazing if you just have a leader that makes the right decisions. All of a sudden, was it even a common fact? I mean, I know we all believe that America, biggest economy in the world, greatest country in the world, everything else, but to actually use that status to the benefit of the American worker is definitely new. I know all politicians on both sides of the aisle always said they were for the American worker. Who's going to run for office and claim the opposite? It's fascinating times. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. Now, in the meantime, as I was driving into work today, I was listening to the mainstream media, and boy, it was a lot of news about Trump and Russia and lawyers, and I'm telling you, it is. It's crazy with the way they present this information as if it is the next Watergate. And I think to myself, how many times as a talk radio host, when President Obama was in office, did I refer to scandals, real scandals, as the next Watergate or worse than Watergate? I mean, Benghazi, intentionally lying to the American people, sending Susan Rice on the TV talk shows, knowing what she's saying is a lie, had nothing to do with protests, had nothing to do with a video. Okay, yeah, and then Fast and Furious, the Lois Lerner IRS persecution of Christians, wanting to know Christian Tea Party groups. Yeah, it absolutely was a persecution. These IRS agents wanted to know what they were praying when they opened their meetings in prayer. They wanted to know what the content of their prayers were. These people are nuts, and they despise people that believe in a higher power, higher than the state. That was what's evident. All of these things happened under President Obama's watch, and the mainstream media pretty much ignored all of them. And the Fast and the Furious one was huge. Huge. And remember Cheryl Atkinson. Cheryl Atkinson, the reporter, the former CBS reporter for on this very subject, Fast and Furious. She did amazing work. She had her computer hacked by the government, and they stole all of her information. She was being spied on because she was the reporter that was trying to blow the lid off of the criminal activity of our own government when it came to running guns across the border, setting up what was essentially a scheme that was designed to intentionally fail so that the president could institute gun control on the border. That was the whole scheme. It was exposed. And, okay, so, yeah, that was really bad. These are actual scandals the media ignores completely in the Obama administration. The networks ignore completely, but they are covering Russia when there is no evidence of collusion. There is just speculation and a witch hunt going on. And yet we have huge questions that we need answered about what the FBI did, who did the unmasking. We need to see the entire Steele dossier. We need to see the FISA application. We need to see all of this stuff because it appears that the higher-ups of the FBI and the Department of Justice were so anti-Trump, and they believed that Hillary Clinton was going to win, so it was no big deal. They crafted an insurance policy, and it seems to me that this entire Russia investigation at this point is the cover-up of what they actually did before they knew that Hillary Clinton was not going to be the 45th president of the United States. So I've got this article here, just real quick. What if Russiagate is the new weapons of mass destruction lie? And it's over at Zero Hedge. I'm not going to read it to you. You read it this morning. It's a piece that you can. Is that Rosie O'Donnell's face? Ugh. What is she doing on the front page of this article? Democrats certain. Oh, because she's big anti-Trump. That's why. Democrats certain in their accusations of guilt sound a lot like Republicans in 2002 on the weapons of mass destruction. It's an interesting read. Check it out. It's up at Zero Hedge. What if Russiagate is the new WMDs? We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere, folks. Back in just a moment. I want to get back to the libertarian way. You said that or the Republican issue here. You said that Republicans get in there and then they're expected to run government. So they may promise to take the Cadillac of government and trade it in, sell it, and get a Pinto instead, more efficient. But then when they get in there, Casey, Cadillac's nice. This is pretty nice. You know what? I think we can just drive this a little bit better than the Democrats who had it before us. So let me ask you this. That seems to be kind of almost a human nature issue as well. So do you think that danger could also materialize in the Libertarian Party if they were ever in control?
You know, I think libertarians do a pretty good job of keeping each other in check, whether it's on social media or at conventions. It's a wide range of individuals.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal.
Ethics.
Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right. So, real quick, the anti-Trump mainstream media. Hey, you ever wonder why here in Arkansas there is a mainstream media that for the most part says positive things about the Republican leadership in this state, but they say all the negative things about Trump? That's strange, isn't it? Does anyone else think that's weird? No? Well, I mean, you just got to understand. I mean, if there hasn't been any massive change from Arkansas being led by Democrats to now being led by Republicans, then why would the media want to rock the boat, you know? If in fact you accept that the media is liberal and has an agenda, like I do. Okay. So, President Trump, this is an article from the Associated Press's Steve Peoples. Trump warnings grow from forgotten Republicans. Have you seen this? Okay, I saw this morning as well. So this is kind of my morning reading list so far, okay? And it's this article is just talks about the lamentations of forgotten Republicans like Bob Corker and others. And they mentioned Tim Pawlenty, who lost in a Republican primary trying to be a third-term governor for Minnesota. Talk about Jeff Flake of Arizona, these people who are leaving office and how they're so worried. And then they talk about John Kasich and how John Kasich may primary President Trump, and the mainstream media, here's just hoping that, of course, please. And they're talking about how 80% of Republicans approving of Donald Trump's job performance what it really just means is the reason that number is so high isn't because they really approve. It's because Republicans are shrinking in number, is what they claim. That Republicans are actually shrinking in number, but the ones that left really approve of Donald Trump. You know what they haven't talked about in this article? They don't say anything about whether or not there's been more Republicans or more people decide to support the Republican Party because of Donald Trump. There's no mention of that. I'm just telling you, the Never Trump media is fascinating here. They really are worried, I think. But let me just say this. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know for sure if there's not going to be a blue wave or if there is going to be a blue wave. But I promise you this. People like John Kasich, Jeff Flake, John McCain, Bob Corker are hoping that the Democrats take the House of Representatives so that they can be proven right, so that they can say, see, the nation's rejecting the president and I was right. I promise you, they want the Democrats to impeach Donald Trump. That's what they want. All because he is not the status quo, not the establishment. It's very clear President Trump is not the establishment. We've got to take a break.
Kind of people that would simply say, okay, that's what our party wants to do, so that's what I'm going to support. In my experience, if the Libertarian doesn't like what the Libertarian Party is going to do, they're going to be probably the most vocal about it. So there's a lot of internal regulation in the Libertarian movement. I myself, I'm not the most Libertarian person out there. I generally believe in the principles of the party, of limited government, of lower taxes, of more freedom, of more choice, government getting out of markets, letting markets control themselves. But there are people that take it further, and we kind of, in discussions and in debates, we check each other, and we just kind of maintain. We help keep each other's feet on the ground, I think. And let me say this: as far as Republicans being in power in Arkansas, they didn't just step into the Cadillac; they upgraded it. They came in and created a way to get 150% raise in their pay and get a per diem and extend their time in office. So they didn't sit down in the same Cadillac Democrats were driving. They traded it in for something better.
Yes, I would agree with that. It's been interesting to watch. On that is specifically Casey Copeland. What are some of the problems? I mean, what are some of the problems facing Arkansas right now that you would address if you were to win?
Well, my general purpose of my campaign is to watch out for the things that matter in my district. That's small farms, small businesses, and small towns. And I think that there is so much big city influence in our state government that some of these things get pushed aside. You see how big hospitals and big insurance companies are running the debate on our health care issues. You see how big corporate farms control some of the debates on agricultural issues. People forget that there's a whole lot of folks just like my family who just have a few chicken houses, maybe bale a little bit of hay every year to sell. And, we're not giant operations, but we are often left out of some of these debates. So I think that once lawmakers get down to Little Rock and get wined and dined in that big city, they get influenced by more and more urban and big city ideas and control.
I don't know how you feel. I agree with that. I've actually heard somebody say before. Well, it's kind of hearsay, but somebody said that they heard a politician say before that being a politician in Arkansas is delicate because you have to balance the interests of Little Rock with the interests of your district. And I thought, wow.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Let's see. So in keeping with kind of a follow-up here, some of your comments on Facebook. Mark writes that the Russian steppes are not suitable for soybeans. The deal with China makes them sharecroppers. Good luck. This is just there was an article out there saying that, and the reason you're going to see articles like this is because you have a lot of farmers out there who are still supporting Trump's, even though they're soybean farmers, and the media's like, I don't understand. It's like, well, maybe people are able to think a little bit past your pain point politics. Maybe people are willing to sacrifice for the good of the country for a little while. Ever think about that? And I just want to say something about that. For a long time, when we were talking about the national debt, we would always ask the question, well, are you willing to give something up so that your kids and your grandkids don't have all the debt? Now, the debt is still a huge problem. We're not really addressing it, and that's a shame. But I think the answer of sacrifices is clearly been answered. There are some Americans who are willing, in order to reclaim sovereignty, to take one on the chin for a time and be patriots so that they can have in the long run, have a better footing, financial footing, But there's all this talk about if China takes Russia up, and this is baloney, if China takes Russia up on their offer of farmland, then they'll be closing. American farmers will lose markets with China that have been open for decades, and they'll never be open to them again. Now, listen, I don't know about you. I don't know if China has the right climate for soybeans. I'm sorry, Russia. I don't know if Russia has the right climate for soybeans. I got a text from a listener on my personal cell phone. It says this: United States, Brazil, Argentina, China produce over 85% of world soybean production. Russia, not even a single-digit percentage. China only provides about 4% of production. However, China consumes over 50% of world soybean production. Do the math. China is going to consume U.S. soybeans. Brazilian economy on the brink of depression. Logistics unable to provide timely shipments. So what does that say? It says they're going to buy your soybean. They're going to buy our soybeans. And I had no idea that they consume 50% of the world soybean production. That's a lot of soy. So, yeah, anyway, and by the way, that text message is from a farmer. That's who that's from. So, anyway, telephone number 870-275-9799. You can call or text that number. Go to facebook.com/Conduit News, and you can sound off about the program there as well. Here we go. Let's talk a little bit about issue 1. So, issue 1 on the ballot has to do with tort reform, so-called tort reform. It is bad tort reform, in my opinion. People are kind of losing their minds over a lot of issues, it seems. I want to lash out. It's pretty interesting. So, I saw this article. It was an Andrew DeMello piece. I think it actually came out on Saturday, but it was published yesterday. Associated Press piece in the Gazette, but it came out on Saturday. Headline: Family Council stirs opposition to tort proposal on Arkansas ballot. So it is a piece specifically about the Family Council, which is a pro-family, pro-traditional American values organization. And they're against issue 1. Now, here's the thing. For those of you who've been consuming Conduit News, you already know this. We've interviewed the president of Family Council, Jerry Cox, multiple times. We followed his opposition to what is now issue 1 on the ballot all the way back in 2017 when he lobbied against it. He fought it. He said it was a bad idea. And now, all of a sudden, people are surprised that he is now trying to defeat the issue, or the Family Council's working, trying to defeat issue 1 and educate the people about what this bill, what this amendment to the Constitution will do, that it will have negative consequences on the concept of life and protecting life from natural conception to natural death. Or, I'm sorry, from the moment of conception until natural death. So, this is not news. This is not news. What you have here are members of the pro-issue 1 camp, which is full of some well-intentioned people. It's also full of some establishment, big government types who love the nursing home industry and think that it's fantastic that Norsworthy gave Jake Files $80,000 for filing the predecessor to this bill that didn't pass. I mean, you give Jake Files $80,000, who's now, by the way, convicted of stealing taxpayer money. You give Jake Files $80,000, the nursing home industry does, for doing their bidding. You get a bunch of other legislators' attention. Be like, hey, I support tort reform too. Where's my $80,000? Now, that's not... I'm doing a little bit of trolling here. I don't know if you can tell. That's not to say that everybody who supports issue 1 is, has their hand out for nursing home money. That's not what I'm saying, okay? So that was me trolling. But the reason that you're seeing this piece by Andrew DeMello in the Associated Press is because you have the pro-issue 1 camp are looking at Family Council and they're saying get them. Do you know why they're saying get family counsel? Because they disagree with family counsel on this one issue. They disagree with them on one issue. Family counsel has been a tireless advocate for traditional American family values and the pro-life movement before most of the people down at the Marble Palace ever thought about running. Jerry Cox was down at the Marble Palace during the Clinton administration when Democrats didn't want anything to do with being pro-life. And so, you know what he did? He worked on a bunch of other issues because you couldn't get any movement on the abortion issue. And one of the issues he tried to fight back then was this very issue that's on the ballot. So he has been consistent fighting the nursing homes and standing up for the elderly who are in their last stages of life for decades. For decades. And you guys took the concept, a Republican concept of tort reform, and you let the nursing home lobby ride it, and it's gone way, way, way too far. And now you're wondering, and instead of just saying, you know what, we probably got this one wrong. You know what, if the Supreme Court rules that you guys have basically log-rolled 4 issues into one, that's going to be on y'all too, by the way. Y'all are going to have egg all over your face if that were to happen. Imagine that. Legislators are incompetent when it comes to writing legislation. I have a problem with the criticism of family counsel. I'm going to tell you why, but let's kind of get into this article real quick. Family counsel says setting caps on awards in lawsuits puts a price on life. That's exactly right. But this is also about allowing the nursing homes to get away with stuff here, you know? When we interviewed former Supreme Court Justice Annabelle Ember Tuck, and she said one of the reasons you don't want a cap is because you want the monetary consequence when somebody's done something wrong to prevent them from doing it again, and also to prevent other people from doing something similar. I mean, if you've broken the law or you've hurt someone, that you don't want to do it again, and so paying a bunch of money is a way to incentivize people to not do those things bad, those bad things again to other people. So, we have pro-issue 1 people attacking family counsel, and this statement is fascinating to me. It's absolutely fascinating. Andrew DeMillo writes, proponents of the measure worry that the Christian group's opposition, family counsel, will stir dissension among conservatives who must work together on numerous issues. Quote, the biggest problem is not the damage to the tort reform proposal, said State Representative Bob Ballinger, a sponsor of the measure. The biggest hurdle is the damage to the pro-life cause. Now, again, so they're saying because we have to work together. So are they saying that they don't want to vote for anti-abortion legislation because Jerry Cox and the Family Council are against issue 1? Are they that fickle? Are they that thin-skinned that you're willing to say, I won't vote for your bill, Jerry Cox, that's going to protect the unborn? I won't vote for that bill because of what you did on issue 1. Is that what we're saying here? Is that how it hurts the pro-life movement? Because you see, the other side, the issue 1 proponents, Republican proponents, they think that being pro-life has nothing to do with protecting elderly in nursing homes. And on this issue, they don't think it does that. They think being pro-life only means about, being anti-abortion. Okay, so that's your definition. Jerry Cox and the Family Council take it a little further. They've got probably, let's just say, a more broad principle about conception to natural death. Okay? That's what they're saying. Because you is that what they're saying here? Are they saying that because we disagree with Jerry Cox and we're so mad that he's using his organization, his experience, his clout, his trustworthiness among the people, his dependability against issue 1, that they won't vote for pro-life legislation or anti-abortion legislation in the future that he brings to them? Because that's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like they're threatening to do. And I wouldn't put it past these people to go after the family council's funding. And then this is my whole point. This is my whole point here. Throw up my Facebook post. I posted this on Saturday about noon when I read this article because I was upset that people are piling on family council. And I wrote this. I said, the people attacking family council's integrity because they disagree with them on one issue are extremists and are showing their true colors. Now, I'm not even really talking about Bob Ballinger in this instance. I made my point about him. But there's some other people out there who have made the argument that family council is for sale, that because you have trial attorneys who obviously don't want their commissions capped, just like nobody would want the government to tell you how much money you can make. You also have trial attorneys out there who really genuinely believe in the Seventh Amendment right. They believe in the Constitution and everything else. There's a lot of complex issues here, but because trial attorneys, have given family council money, all of a sudden now that means, the only reason family counsel's against issue 1 is because trial attorneys have donated to their cause. Really? Really? I don't understand how. I mean, I do understand how you make the argument. You make it because you want to win at all costs. You want to question family counsel's integrity because you want to win. Family counsel's not for sale. Again, they have been against this issue all the way back in the 90s. They have fought this issue before, and actually, it might have been in the early 2000s. But anyway, they have done this before, well before many of you were even down there, okay? So to say that they're for sale just because you have a like-minded group on this issue giving family council money is preposterous. And it just shows that you guys are shallow. And this is why you're extreme. You ready for this? Because me using the word extremist, because listen, I know I've been called an extremist. I know you conservatives have been called extremists. And I don't know, say I'm channeling my inner Donald Trump. I'm calling them extremists. Because these people, when it comes to the Marble Palace or the establishment or whatever the big money wants, in this case, nursing homes, these people are more than happy to agree to disagree on any one issue so long as they get what they want. But the moment they think that they are not going to get what they want out of the deal, they go personal. And this whole, we can agree to disagree. They only want to agree to disagree if they get what they want. They don't want to agree to disagree if there's a possibility that an organization like Family Council has more credibility than what your legislator tells you. If that happens, all bets are off. The ends justify the means, and we're going to come after you. We're going to come after Family Council because they're claiming that they're more conservative than we are, and we don't like that. And if you make reasoned arguments that expose the other side as not being as conservative as Family Council or other organizations that we've seen, they go after you because they have to destroy that person. They have to destroy that organization. They have to make them less credible. And that's what we're seeing here. And it's over one disagreement, over one issue. And that's so petty. That is so petty. And instead of convincing the people with your ideas, okay, let's agree to disagree, and let's let the voters decide. So Family Council, you go do your messaging, and the nursing home people and so-called tort reform people, you go do your messaging, and we'll see where the voters come out. They would be more than happy to do that if they knew it was a sure thing they were in. They would be more than happy to do that. You would not see, if the issue 1 people, if they thought they were going to win, you probably wouldn't have even seen this Associated Press article. That's my bet. You wouldn't have seen it. You're seeing it now because they think they're going to lose, and that's why they're going after the integrity of the Family Council and Jerry Cox. And then they're insinuating that they're for sale. They're insinuating that the only reason the Family Council's taking this opinion or taking this position is because they've been given money by lawyers. They've been giving donations by lawyers. Give me a break. Family Council, by the way, has a ton of support, not just from attorneys, but from people who believe in the pro-life movement, who believe in traditional biblical American Christian values. They believe in that. Traditional American values, comma, biblical Christian values. I want to make sure those are two separate things, or can be two separate things. So, yeah. So, you get my point, right? Like, this is unbelievable. And the other side, I meant what I said in the Facebook post. They are showing their true colors. It is an extreme position to say we can agree to disagree so long as I get what I want in the end. But we can't be civil. We can't be congenial. We're going to go after you personally. We're going to go after the integrity of your organization if we think you might win. I don't want to agree to disagree. I want to destroy you. And that is what the pro-issue one movement is doing to the Family Council. And that's, that's before we even get into the substance of whether or not you should vote for or against it. Now, I think you should vote against it because of what it does, putting a cap on putting price on life, capping what attorneys can make. But my biggest problem with the whole thing is it allows the legislature to set rules of evidence in a courtroom, which is going to have terrible special. And they claim, that's the thing, they claim this will end special interest. You guys are going to be getting money and campaign donations. You're going to be getting money and campaign donations from people who are going to want you to write rules of evidence in a lawsuit. I mean, the special interest is going to be even worse because I know you guys, and I know about the Special Language Committee. I know what you guys do, slipping things in there. It'd be a disaster, an absolute disaster, not to mention a violation of separation of powers. So, I mean, if this were to pass, you're going to have, this thing's going to be tied up in court for a while. Not to mention it's tied up in court right now, whether or not it should even be on the ballot. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
I mean, if that's true, but that, I think, is an apparent mentality. If you just look at the results that we have, they seem to have to balance. It's like, wait a second, Little Rock people didn't elect you. Your people did.
And I think that, and Paul, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think that also has something to do with the two-party system and all the money that's in Little Rock that gets fed into the Republican and Democrat parties, so that the parties kowtow to the Little Rock money. And then the parties control their individual, or try to control their individual members as much as they can. So because Little Rock has a lot of influence with those two big parties, therefore Little Rock then has a lot of influence over the individual members that come down there. And I think it's just follow the money. I think that's the answer.
I know President Trump is a Republican, But from my standpoint, Casey, he doesn't represent the status quo. He seems to be shaking things up in a lot of...
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Everyone. I'm on my third cup of coffee, so I'm having a good morning. Let's see here. I want to remind you guys, coming up at the bottom of the next hour, we're going to introduce you to Dr. Michael Busler. Dr. Busler is a public policy analyst. He's an economics expert and a professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. He's been a featured columnist at Newsmax, LifeZet, and townhall.com. And we're going to talk to him about the media shifting their narrative because the economy is doing good and trying to allow Obama to take credit for it. It's just because they know. They absolutely know that, The polling, the American people are starting to get wise to this. They're starting to realize, hey, President Trump, might be one of the better presidents of my lifetime in terms of results, in terms of, wow, look what has happened across, flyover country since he's been in office. And you're starting to see those poll numbers and everything else. It's fascinating, fascinating stuff. So we're going to talk to him about that. I'm sure there's other accomplishments as well, that they want to take away from President Trump and try to blame the liberal ideology. And you see this in one form or another in every administration when you go from, when you move party to party. There's this Washington Times article about it. Since President Trump took office, the economy is booming, according to such reliable sources as federal agencies and analysts and data from the private sector. That may not be good enough for us, however. The news media is seeking to rewrite history to credit former President Barack Obama for this feat, says one major business publication. The stronger the economy gets under Trump, the more desperate his critics are to hand credit over to Obama, even if that entails changing the past. A recent New York Times story says it all, and they have the headline here. See here. We seem to recall that the economy was stagnated in 2016 after the weakest recovery from a recession since the Great Depression. In fact, the New York Times itself described Obama's economy this way. In August 2016, for 3 quarters in a row, the growth rate of the economy has hovered around a mere 1%. In the last quarter of 2015, the first quarter of 2016, the economy expanded at a feeble annual rate of 0.9% and 0.8%. The editorial also cites similar coverage at CBS News. Now that the economy is outperforming everyone's expectations, Trump's critics want to pretend that the current boom was already baked in the cake. Now, after Trump's deregulation and tax cuts are starting to take effect, we're seeing still more signs of stronger growth. Polls show that the public gives Trump credit for what's going on today. Not the mainstream press, have it right. So we'll explore this a little bit further. I mean, you have President Trump saying that we may get 5%. I mean, his goal is 5% economic growth. The press has got to do something to counter, who gets the credit. So, and it's funny, they used to shift blame, right? President Obama's first 4 years was about blaming Bush for everything and how bad it was. And now people are trying to argue over who gets the credit for how good everything is. That's pretty interesting. Okay, folks, we got one more hour coming your way next. Don't go anywhere, all right? We got a big announcement. Got a big announcement to make. Back in a minute.
and talk of North Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, and EAB radio station.
So that the parties kowtow to the Little Rock money, and then the parties control their individual, or try to control their individual members as much as they can. So because Little Rock has a lot of influence with those two big parties, therefore Little Rock then has a lot of influence over the individual members that come down there. And I think it's just follow the money. I think that's the answer.
I know President Trump is a Republican, but from my standpoint, Casey, he doesn't represent the status quo. He seems to be shaking things up in a lot of ways. And so I'm just curious, as a libertarian, watching this, what are your thoughts about what President Trump is doing and what he's done so far?
I think the best thing that he's doing is that he's approaching a lot of these problems from a different angle. He's not coming at them as a politician who has been in the system or been in party politics his whole career, and he's not coming there with that mentality. So he's looking at it more as a businessman, almost looking at it more as a private citizen would look at it, rather than somebody who has been trained and influenced and groomed by party politics for years and years. So I think that is a benefit. I think it's good to have a set of eyes, look at some of these problems differently, and he's having some success with that. Of course, as a libertarian, we don't really like government controlling markets too much, and I think that he's more inclined to that. But really, I think the best thing about what he's doing is he's looking at it unlike politicians look at these problems.
Yeah. No, I like what you said. He's looking at it like a private citizen would look at it, and that certainly is the case. And it's almost like he's looking at the problems for the first time. I mean, I know he's not necessarily, but he's looking at the problems, like you said. He hasn't been indoctrinated with what he's supposed to think. He's looking at each problem, as its separate problem. Okay, what's the quickest way to fix this? Yeah, there may, and then after you have some of those ideas, you say, well, there may be some unintended consequences if we do it this way or whatever. But I mean, I found it, like for example with NATO. I mean, we spent all this money on NATO, and nobody else, is paying their fair share, to use the progressive term. But when he made that point in front of the world and in front of NATO about Germany making that deal with Russia, and there's 60% of their gas now coming from Russia, they're making Russia rich, but then they want protection from Russia. I mean, just to point out a hypocrisy. I mean, that's a hypocrisy that would be pointed out if you took that situation and shrunk it down. You would, around a water cooler at an office somewhere, somebody would make that point, and he's making it to their face. And it shakes everything up, and that's what's so refreshing about what he does sometimes.
I mean, you set aside some of the arguments about morals and ethics. He makes people in politics who are career politicians. He makes them uncomfortable, and I think we can all appreciate that.
Yes, I think you're exactly right. It is so much fun to watch some of these guys. Just kind of squirm a little bit. We're talking with Casey Copeland. He's a libertarian candidate for state representative District 80. So, Casey, I'd love for you to tell our audience, if people want to know more about you, where they can find that information.
Well, I'm on Facebook. The Russians haven't hacked me yet.
Good.
It's at Elect Copeland on Facebook. We've got a website that's going to push out later this week, maybe early next week. So right now, Facebook is probably the best place. And, they can send me messages or post stuff, and I try to respond as quick as I can.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, Casey, I certainly appreciate you coming on the program. I'd love to do this again, especially, as the campaign, gets into full gear. There's going to be news and stuff to talk about. So you feel free to come on the program anytime, okay?
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Casey Copeland, everybody. He's a libertarian. He's a candidate for state representative in District 80, and we certainly appreciate him coming on the program. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back here in just a minute, so don't go anywhere. Thanks so much for...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us. It is hour number 2, and we are so excited that you're spending the beginning of your week with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine, and we can't do this without you. All right, so we've got some news. I guess we should get to the news, right? I mean, we kind of teased it all last week. It certainly was teased all this week over on the Facebook page and everything else. So I present to you, without further ado, the big news is the brand new Conduit News. .com. As we see it here, yes, here is the website. ConduitNews.com is now a place where you can get real news, real insights for Arkansas. As we see the new website here. Now, it's quite interesting because it's certainly a lot more interactive. I mean, look at some of the stories here. Scrolling down here, we've got this first story, casinos, more tax revenue or less. This is interesting. We talked a little bit about this last week on the show, but it's interesting how, according to the government, it's like we can't even trust the government numbers. Is it going to be, I mean, if they pass the casino amendment, is it going to be more revenue or less? Nobody seems to know. I find that very interesting. Let's see here. What else do we have here? You have this one. This one's huge news. Minimum wage. I think I've already got that one pulled up. Go to the next tab there, Joe. About the minimum wage efforts. Minimum wage increase to $11 an hour will now be on the November ballot. People of Arkansas will vote this November on whether to increase the minimum wage up to $11 an hour by 2021. An initiated act to raise the minimum wage received over 84,000 signatures and has been certified to be placed on the November ballot. They needed just 68,000. The raise would be incremental, with a final $11 per hour minimum wage in Arkansas by January 2021. The current minimum wage in Arkansas is $8.50, the highest in the region. The highest state minimum wage in the U.S. is currently $11.50 per hour in Washington. This is a terrible idea, but I think a lot of people understand that, the minimum wage keeps passing, the increase keeps passing. Tomorrow on the program during the Conduit for Commerce policy segment, I will be explaining to you how minimum wage, it's not only bad for small business, it's actually really bad for the individual worker, and I'll tell you that on the show tomorrow. And then we have this casinos. This casino one is interesting. There is an open debate on the impact of a proposed ballot initiative. Yeah, if you can take it away and go ahead and click on it and go to this one. This is interesting. There's an open debate on the impact of a proposed ballot initiative that would create 4 new casinos in Arkansas. The state issued a revenue impact statement last week claiming that adding new casinos and taxing them would reduce state tax revenue by $36 million. Supporters of the casino amendment argue new casinos would increase tax revenue. Isn't it interesting? You think they'd be able to agree on this, right? The proposed constitutional amendment has not yet been approved to appear on the ballot, but supporters are still securing signatures. They have until August 24th to get 84,858 valid signatures. So that's a story on there. But check it out. Okay, let's navigate through this some for a little bit. If you go to the top there, go ahead and click the About page. So if you want to know, right, if you want to know where you can listen to the radio program, for example, you click on the About page there. Then, of course, you see the pop-up window that comes up there, or it just came up with me. So right now when we're broadcasting live, you're going to have a pop-up video when the show is live. And this is a good feature that we have because, we do the terrestrial radio broadcasts on stations across the state when we are, here from 6 to 8 every morning. But there may be times, right, when that's not the case and we need to get news to you faster. Well, this will be a way to do that, where if you're on the website looking at news and something happens and we need to get to you quicker, we can't wait until 6 a.m., right? This will be a way for us to communicate with you. And if you'll like the YouTube page or subscribe to the YouTube page, click the little bell for notifications. That'll really help because you'll get a notification there that we're live as well. So where to listen? First of all, let's look at this. What's the mission? Conduit News. Conduit News is the #1 source of Arkansas conservative news and politics. Our mission is to provide in-depth conservative commentary on Arkansas breaking news. At the Arkansas Capitol and across the state, we believe in economic freedom, individual liberty, limited government. Conduit News is redefining how Arkansans engage with their government. Needs to be some sort of conduit to get the information from the Capitol, from the power structures, to the people. And so far, that's a very offensive notion to many people who maintain that power. Conduit News, you can get the radio program there on those stations across the state. Looking at 101.1 FM The Answer out of Little Rock, 101.3 FM KBTM out of Northeast Arkansas. And you've got 101.3 FM KARV out of the River Valley in Russellville, 102.7 out of Stuttgart. That's KWAK. And then 96.7 FM The Marshall KFPW out of Fort Smith. You can get the program on those stations live from 6 to 8. And then, of course, we've got YouTube, Conduit News, all of the different platforms and that sort of thing. If you want to support the program in any way, you click on the support button, and you're going to get the option to support us through Patreon if that's something that you're into. We really appreciate that. $5, $10, or $25 monthly options to become a patron on Patreon. And you could also advertise with us. You could contact us, let us know. But you're definitely going to want to keep up with the news on the front page, on the home page. And we certainly appreciate that. And we're really excited about this. We're excited. Hey, scroll down, go back to the home page there, because this is a feature that I really do want to highlight. If you can go back to the home page. If you scroll down right below the headlines here, the headlines right now are, casinos. You have the chamber head forms a group to oppose strengthening term limits. You have the minimum wage. You have the satanic statue that made its way to the Arkansas Capitol. But then right below that, we have some of our recent highlights about Arkansas politics and national issues. Okay, we had Jan Morgan on the program Friday. You can listen to her clip as she reacts to Governor Asa Hutchinson being open to red flag gun control laws. Then next you can go listen to Senator Linda Collins Smith explain why she is against the term limits amendment that's on the ballot, Issue 3. Then you could also, very popular clip here, we have Chris Ann Hall from last week, and she says that the potential Trump testimony is a perjury trap. And she's got excellent analysis and really legal advice for the president. And you can, you can scroll through that. You can load a new bunch of, here's the full Chris Ann Hall interview, for example. She talked about a 700-year history, the Constitution's 700-year history in 5 foundational documents. You can take the quiz. We had Arkansas business owner Lionel Curry on, who is quoted as saying, God has a plan for you. Anyway, we have these stories up there if you want to catch up real quick on maybe something that you missed. Scrolling down there on the YouTube channel, you can see our Judge Janine Pirro video is also up there as well. Did you guys see where Democrat Jared Henderson, the guy that's running against Asa, he has proposed an $870 million teacher pay plan because money grows on trees. Obviously, money grows on trees, right, folks? So we got all that and more. Anyway, it's the brand new ConduitNews.com. Check it out. That's ConduitNews.com. Very excited to give you guys more than just this 2-hour program, but to give you guys print media you can share with your friends. You can get the news out there. Some people don't have time to listen, but they do have time to read. Some people have time to listen and maybe read, I guess. You know, some people can do both. But we wanted to give you guys as many outlets, as many mediums as we possibly can. Coming up at 7:33, I want to introduce you to Dr. Michael Busler. He's going to be on the program this hour, a public policy analyst, economics expert, and professor of finance at Stockton University. We'll be talking to him about President Donald Trump's record and what the mainstream media is, how they're trying to distort it. We'll tell you all that. We got more to get to when we come back on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. This is Conduit News Radio, and you can get the program at ConduitNews.com and much, much, much more. Back in just a moment. For this particular House seat?
Paul, I have been on and off involved in politics for 20 years or so. Back in '98, I won a spot on the Washington County Quorum Court, spent two terms there, and then decided to go to law school and start families and start a career.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of years ago, while I was in law school, watching how the federal government was expanding, watching then under the Obama administration how it kept expanding and how the states started to follow, I just decided that government is growing at unprecedented rates. We are giving over more and more private tasks to government agencies, and that is just a cost and a path that I just don't think that we can go down as a state or as a nation. So my small government inclination.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Real quick, the month of September is going to be a busy month. A lot of opportunities in the 1st District of Arkansas. Conduit for Action is going to be making several presentations in the 1st District of Arkansas. On September 11th, Conduit for Action will have a presentation at the Greene County Republican Committee meeting. On September 25th, there'll be the presentation in Baxter County, right there at the edge of the 1st District. Baxter County Republican Committee. On September 27th, Conduit for Action will have a presentation at Arkansas County, the Republican Committee in Arkansas County. And then October 1st, they will be presenting at the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party as well. So a lot of opportunities there. I'll give you those dates again, but a lot of opportunities to get a lot of good factual information about what's going on there. I'll tell you this, with the website, one of the things I'm excited about is really just giving conservatives a place to land. You know what I mean? A reliable, dependable resource that is there for you to check, aside from just 6 to 8 in the morning to catch the live show, or aside from just going to the website to get the podcasts or the video archives. This is an effort to broaden and really kind of give, if you like the stuff that we cover, trying to and really the goal to be transparent with you and to measurably reduce the size and scope of government, to hold our elected officials accountable with what they say on the campaign trail versus what they do in office, trying to tell you what these bills are actually doing. Of course, we've got the session coming up in January. We want to just give you guys a place to land and a place to, be around like-minded folks. That's really what the Facebook right now. Right now, if you go to the Facebook video, the live stream there, that really is what it is. It's a community of people. We just wanted to make sure that you can also turn for reliable stories and the news and events of the day. So really excited, and I want to thank everybody at Conduit News. This is a huge undertaking and been such a huge group effort to do all of this. This is it's really exciting. So I want to thank everybody and thank the listeners too. You guys make this possible as well. Don't think that that's not true. And I find it interesting, kind of piggybacking off of what we talked about last hour. If you, excuse me, I have this cough this morning. If you look at who the Marble Palace seems to be afraid of, or who they're attacking, it's pretty obvious who they consider to be a threat, right? Conduit's one of those organizations. Now you have Family Council. They're outspoken against something that I think a lot of the Marble Palace wants. Not all, but a lot of it, they want this. And you have a conservative group like the Family Council now taking heat. You have veiled threats, what I would call veiled threats, saying, this hurts the pro-life movement in general. And I'm thinking, does that mean you're not going to support pro-life legislation now because you disagree with the pro-life stance they're taking on the elderly? You can tell who they're threatened by. And I think, honestly, what I think is they're threatened by organizations that present themselves as conservatives and then disagree with other people that present themselves as conservatives. Right now in Arkansas, that's really the political, I don't know, I guess you could call it a microcosm, because, you see similar stuff on the national circuit, the national level. They're threatened by that because they're the ones that should get to define what a conservative is, because they're the ones in power. And they get upset. You got an organization like Family Council coming out and saying, issue 1 is not good for the people. Hey, also issue one's not pro-life. Oh, my goodness, you said what? It's not pro-life? And they look at that as being unfair because they say, well, Family Council's saying we're not pro-life. They're not saying that you're for abortion, and they're relying on the people that people understand that. Now, you may be worried that they don't, but I feel like that says more about you than and what you think of the voters than it does about them. I mean, why are people so surprised? If you spoke against something or lobbied against something when it was being debated in the legislature, why are you now surprised when that organization, Family Council, is now still against it today when people are going to vote on it coming up in November? Why would you be surprised by that? But they are. And it's because they think they're going to lose. What's the title of the podcast from last hour when we talked about this, Joe? What did you decide it was? I thought it was a good title. They attack Family Council because they think they're going to lose. That's exactly right. They're now attacking an organization that has stood for Christian values, traditional American values for decades, and they're doing it because they disagree on one issue, and that one issue is so important to them, and they think they're going to lose, so they're willing to really just burn a bridge, honestly. Agree to disagree, but only if we get what we want will we be civil about it. But if there's a chance you're going to get what you want, we'll attack your integrity. We'll attack you personally. I mean, you see that in elections, right? Yeah, they can't agree to disagree. They can agree. We can agree to disagree on Medicaid expansion here in Arkansas. We can agree to disagree on that, so long as we get to keep it. But if there's a chance that there will be a candidate here or a candidate here who might win to get it, we'll go after the integrity of the entire organization, and we'll claim, we'll make outrageous statements that are not backed up by fact at all. This is their game plan. And it's because the ends justify the means. It's because they don't want to lose. They want to win at all costs. And I'm pointing out that, it's a deviation from principles. Yeah, I'm just pointing out that it's interesting to me how uncivil, how they are out there attacking Family Council's integrity. They're saying that Family Council's for sale. They're saying that they've been bought. I mean, they're really projecting because the nursing home industry gave Jake Files $80,000. Hello? The nursing home industry, you've got a judge that pled guilty for lowering a judgment, took $10,000 to lower a judgment by $1 million. It's projection and deflection. Project and deflect. That's exactly right. It's one of the 7 ways that government attempts to grow, is you project and deflect. You project the very thing. It's also a tactic. If you look it up, projection and deflection is a textbook tactic of narcissism. It is. It's a textbook tactic of narcissism where you will project what you're guilty of or your very flaws onto other people to make yourself look good. It's that last part that makes the narcissist use the tactic because it makes you look better because it's all about you. And the Benjamins. It's all about you and the Benjamins. Telephone number is 870-275-9799. When we come back, we'll be talking with Dr. Busler. Really excited to talk to him, introduce you to him. He is an economics, professor, expert, policy analyst. Dr. Michael Busler will be on the program. When we come back, happy Monday to everybody out there. All right, thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here. Back in a moment. for this particular House seat?
Paul, I have been on and off involved in politics for 20 years or so. Back in '98, I won a spot on the Washington County Quorum Court, spent two terms there, and then decided to go to law school and start families and start a career.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of years ago, actually, while I was in law school, watching how the federal government was expanding, watching then under the Obama administration how it kept expanding and how the states started to follow, I just decided that government is growing at unprecedented rates. We are giving over more and more private tasks to government agencies, and that is just a cost and a path that I just don't think that we can go down as a state or as a nation. So my small government inclinations, my limited government inclinations, and my inclination for government to control spending, which means that they don't tax us as much, led me to jump into this race this year.
That sounds like a great reason. Talk about where you kind of got your libertarian philosophy from. I mean, was it in law school that you realized that more liberty is better?
Well, just some of that, and then just getting out and getting out on my own, starting a family, and opening up a small office of my own, and just living life, kind of led me to that conclusion. It was really in 2006 when I joined the party after watching the federal government decide to bail out so many private corporations with our money. I just decided that both parties appeared to be parties of big government, and that just wasn't what I believed. I was a Republican when I was on the Quorum Court, and that's when I thought that the Republican Party really was a party of small, limited government. And just over time, my eyes opened up, and I decided that they weren't. And I decided to join the Libertarian Party because their principles really are about small, limited government and more freedom for consumers and taxpayers and just people in general.
Why do you think it's, for somebody who, like you said, who thought that those ideals were in the Republican Party, I mean, they put limited government back in the platform. Recently, the Republicans did here in Arkansas. Of course, it did get taken out, which was weird. Why do you think it's so hard for Republicans to actually limit government the way the platform says?
Well, I think once you become a party in power, there is, I guess, an expectation to run government. And I think that once you're in that power and have that.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. Good morning to you on your morning drive into work. We really appreciate you listening. Hey, folks, welcome to the program for the first time. I want to introduce you to Dr. Michael Busler. He is a public policy analyst. He's an economics expert. He's a professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey, and he's a featured columnist at Newsmax, LifeZed, and townhall.com. Dr. Busler, welcome to the program. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, Paul. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. I'm glad that you could make it. The reason I wanted to have you on is I want to pick your brain about what the media is doing. I've noticed a shift in the mainstream media. You've got an economy that's doing pretty good. Trump's starting to get the credit for it, according to the polls, and they're trying to rewrite history. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. The economy is doing very well, and in my view, it's going to continue to do even better into the short-term and perhaps long-term future. The reason is President Trump has got economic growth up significantly. And as a result of that, we're coming into this robust economy, and he has done this basically by reversing much of what President Obama did. President Obama is the first and only president in history to serve a term in office without having at least 1 year where annual economic growth was at least 3%. He averaged a little over 2% for his entire time in office. And the reason is simple. His primary goal was not economic growth. His primary goal was to cure perceived social injustices. It's an injustice that everybody doesn't have health care. It's an injustice that CEOs make 300 or 400 times what the average employee makes. It's an injustice there's not enough food stamps to go around. It's an injustice that big business is taking advantage of consumers. So what President Obama did, all of his actions to cure those perceived social injustices ended up slowing economic growth. For instance, one of the first things he did was have the Affordable Care Act passed. That provided health care for another 6% of the population. We had 85% with health insurance before the Affordable Care Act, jumped up to 91%, so it helped about 6% of the population. The problem is it tended to slow economic growth, and the reasons are simple. There were 23 new or raised taxes in the Affordable Care Act. So what that did was reduce consumption, disposable income and consumption for consumers, tended to slow economic growth. The Affordable Care Act also required that employers provide health insurance for all employees or face a $3,000 fine. That added to the cost of labor, again, tended to slow economic growth. President Obama also, with the President Bush passed tax cuts in 2001. They were going to last for 10 years. They expired in 2011. President Obama extended them for everybody except the upper class. The upper class, the highest tax bracket, had their taxes raised by 10%. Well, that reduced the amount of investment capital that the higher income earners could put back into the economy. By reducing the amount of capital, we have a capital-intensive economy. By reducing the amount of capital going in, that tended to slow economic growth. Then President Obama put in thousands of regulations that he felt would help consumers, and they ended up making it harder for business to expand, and that tended to slow economic growth. One thing he did was convince Congress to pass the Dodd-Frank bill. Now, President Obama felt that much of the financial crisis was caused by what he called predatory lending, which means banks made loans to people who really can't afford it. So he passed Dodd-Frank, which eliminated predatory lending, but it also almost eliminated most other lending. Well, if banks are not lending money, monetary policy is not going to be effective. So that tended to slow economic growth. So what happened? President Trump gets into office. The first thing he can do on his own through executive orders would be to reverse a lot of these counterproductive regulations, which he did. Since he did that, the economy has been growing at over a 3% rate. Then he convinced Congress Dodd-Frank was slowing down economic growth and holding the economy back. He got Congress to repeal part of that, went into effect this year. He also said, look, if we really want to get growth increased, let's take a look at what past presidents have done. So he looked at what Reagan did in 1981, 82, and he looked at what Kennedy and Johnson did at 63, 64, and he said, look, in both instances, they reduced taxes for all Americans, all the way up and down, middle class, upper class, everybody. Taxes were reduced, and the economy took off. So he convinces Congress last November to reduce taxes for everybody. That went into effect in January of this year. By April of this year, the economy was growing at over a 4% rate, and it's my view that the third quarter of this year, the number won't be announced till the end of October, we're probably going to see a 4.5% growth, and it wouldn't surprise me to see a quarter next year where economic growth exceeded even 5%. 1982, when Reagan's tax cut went into effect, in 1984, economic growth for the year was 7.5%. So the growth that we're getting now and the robust economy is all due to President Trump essentially reversing much of what President Obama did, putting government out of the way of business, letting business go in the marketplace and pursue opportunities. That's adding all the growth that we're seeing now and I believe into the future. So it's President Trump who should get complete credit for what's happening today in the economy.
And I agree with that. And we're talking with Dr. Michael Busler, public policy analyst. He is a professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. I agree with what you're saying, and I'm glad you're setting the record straight. We have the media. I think they're seeing this. I think they also see that the average American, I mean, I saw a poll last week, I know from Turning Point USA, Candace Owens, she talked about how black support for Trump has doubled, according to one poll from last year to now. The mainstream media sees this, and they say, oh, we've got to figure out a way to say that, President Obama is responsible for all of this. And, that you're starting to see that. They're trying to promote this idea that this is Obama's economy.
Yeah, and clearly it isn't President Obama's economy. And, the press, I've seen 3 different studies, and they all come about to the same conclusion. More than 90% of what the press writes about President Trump is negative. They've lost a lot of their objectivity. They feel they have a duty to somehow minimize the effects of what President Trump is doing. In fact, they'd like to get him out of office sooner if they could. The mainstream media is supposed to report factually on what's happening without a bias in the reporting. Now, you certainly have your opinions, and on your opinion pages, you're allowed to give what your opinions of what is happening, what your opinions are. But when it comes to reporting the news, it's got to be done on a factual basis. And what is being done is always done on such a slanted basis that it's not really factual news, and it even gets to the point where President Trump says, "Look, some of the things you're saying just aren't true," and he refers to that as fake news. And then he uses the term "enemy of the people," and everybody was all up in arms about that. We had last Thursday, was it, the 300 editorials in saying what President Trump is doing is wrong. The mainstream media has got to start reporting things factually. If they're providing inaccurate information to the voters and the voters are making decisions based on inaccurate information, you end up causing chaos with democracy. That's what the Russians are trying to do. The Russians are trying to put out inaccurate information so people will make bad, uninformed decisions. The media is almost doing the same thing that the Russians are doing by providing inaccurate information to the readers.
Yeah, it's kind of, I've described it before, there's so many people that consume the mainstream media, they think that they're being told the truth. And, when you think that you're free and you think that you're, being told the truth, that's extremely powerful, and that's better. Yeah. That's way better than an outright totalitarian state, you know what I'm saying, where you have the illusion of objectivity and the illusion of choice. And I would just say that, the facts that you went through, you talked and, quite eloquently about all of the regulations that Obama put in, the taxes that Obama put in. Can you imagine if that made a report on CNN where it would never happen where you would say, well, why does Trump? Well, this is what Trump did. He cut taxes and he rolled back everything Obama had done. That's the facts. You could argue cause and effect, but the facts are he did these things that were supposed to help the economy, and we now have positive economic results. Make your own conclusions. Draw your own conclusions, America. But this is what happened. They would never do that. They have to editorialize.
That's exactly right. And, a lot of the anger, I think, that's being felt in America today is a result of this slow growth economy. Again, if you look back in history, it goes back even a little further than Obama. The U.S. hasn't had economic growth of at least 3% since 2005. We haven't had economic growth of 4% since the year 2000. That's the longest period, in my view, of economic stagnation in the U.S. history. President Trump is reversing this. Now, as a result of that bad economy for so long, you get a lot of frustrated Americans. For instance, college graduates, for the last 10 years, and I've seen it with my students, over the last 10 years, they struggle to get one good job offer when they graduate. Many times, college graduates have taken jobs for which they're overqualified simply because there's a no-growth economy and there aren't good jobs available. So they take jobs for which they're overqualified. You don't need the college degree necessarily. So they get very frustrated with that, especially when they're carrying a lot of debt. As a result of the college grads taking those jobs, then the people without college degrees, they don't have any opportunity at all. They drop out of the labor force, become what we call discouraged workers, probably 5 or 6 million of those, and that leads to a lot of frustration, and people start blaming each other for their bad plight. Once the growth gets going as it is today, and we're already starting to see it, a lot of underemployed college graduates are now finding jobs that take advantage of their degree. That opens up jobs for people who have less than a college degree, and starting in June, those people started flocking back into the labor force, so the participation rate is starting to go up. I think that's going to get rid of a lot of the anger in America, and we can start working together rather than fighting each other all the time.
We're talking with Dr. Michael Busler, public policy analyst, professor at Stockton University, and he knows what he's talking about, clearly, folks. But, Dr. Busler, I'm curious, you did mention all the stuff that Trump has done in terms of, rolling back regulations and things like this. But what is your opinion on the tariff situation? And, now we have China coming back to the table, and they're saying we will negotiate now because, our economy's not doing so hot now. I mean, that also, I think, has a lot to do with maybe some confidence. I mean, you have at least Trump saying, I know there's some debate as to how effective it is. It seems pretty effective to me, but you have a psychological confidence here where the president's going to bat for the middle class and the American worker versus President Obama that told small business owners they didn't build their business and demonized millionaires and billionaires, his entire 8 years. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm a free market economist. You mention the word tariff or taxes, and my stomach starts to churn.
I understand.
President Trump wants a free and fair trade policy. His goal would be, I'm not sure he's quite going to get there, but his goal would be to have no tariffs on anything. So President Trump gets into office and he says, look, I'd like to my trading partners, we need to renegotiate these lopsided trade deals. For instance, if the European in Europe, if they build a car in Germany or Italy and sell it in the U.S., we charge them a 2.5% tariff. If an American car company makes a car company and sells it in Europe, they charge us a 10% tariff. So the result is we import a lot of their cars, which means our money flows out of the country when we pay for them. They import very few of our cars, so none of their money is flowing into our country, and we have this negative balance of trade to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars every year. So President Trump said, look, I want to renegotiate this with everybody. NAFTA is similarly lopsided toward our trading partners. I want to renegotiate this. Well, the trading partners, they're in no hurry to renegotiate this. They have favorable positions. Now, remember, President Trump is a business person. He's not a politician. So a business person, when you're confronted with a problem like this, you don't do what politicians do. They would convene a summit sometime in the fall. They'd come back and discuss it next year. They'd wait till next fall to reconvene again, and then they'd kick the can down the road to the next guy. Well, President Trump is a business person. A business person, if you see a problem, especially if it's going to affect your bottom line, you confront that problem immediately and resolve it. So President Trump had to do something to bring the trading partners to the table as quickly as possible. Again, a business person in that situation would create a sense of urgency. So how did he do that? you start slapping these tariffs on everybody, and we're in a much stronger position than all of our trading partners. So this is going to hurt them much more than it's going to hurt us, and he knew that. So by putting on these tariffs, all of a sudden these our trading partners saying, wait a minute, we can't do this. We have to renegotiate something. So before you know it, 2 weeks ago, the European Union comes over and says, Trump's right. We're going to work toward trying to get no tariffs on anything. The president of Mexico last week came in and said, look, we have to renegotiate this NAFTA as soon as possible. And as you just mentioned, I think today or tomorrow, the Chinese delegation is coming over here to renegotiate these trade deals. So President Trump is doing what any business person would do, confront the problem immediately, create a sense of urgency so everybody comes to the table. His goal is to get the no tariffs, completely free and fair trade as soon as possible. I think by the end of the year, if these aren't all resolved, that we'll at least be taking steps to come up with a resolution that will benefit American manufacturers into the future, because it will open up markets to them that, because of these lopsided trade agreements, haven't been open to them forever. Now these markets will be opened. Even if there's a little short-term pain this year, will be much long-term gain.
I agree with you, and I really appreciate that analysis. That's a really insightful analysis. We're out of time, Dr. Michael Bustler, but I'd love to have you on again sometime. And do you tweet or Facebook or anything? I just would love to give our audience a way to follow you or something.
Sure. So all of my columns, I write 1 to 2 columns a week, and I've been doing it for years. My Twitter account is @mbustler, MBUSLER, so you can see everything there. I have a Facebook page. It's called Funding Democracy, the Economics of Freedom. So it's facebook.com/Funding Democracy, or if you just go to Facebook and search Funding Democracy, it'll come up there. If you follow me, you'll be able to see everything that I write. I appreciate that.
All right, so on Twitter, that's @M, as in Michael, @M Bustler, BUSLER. I'm going to follow you right now, and it's been a pleasure, Dr. Bustler. Thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you. My pleasure, too.
All righty.
Take care.
All right, folks, we got to take a break. It's Conduit News Radio. I want to direct you to the brand new conduitnews.com. That was our big announcement. Brand new website, conduitnews.com. Go there for stories as well as insightful interviews like you just heard. Back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your 7th Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the 7th Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed roller lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com.
And that expectation. You want people to see you running government efficiently and properly, and for some reason the Republicans have convinced themselves that means helping people and spending more money and shifting taxes around to make it look like they're cutting taxes. And I think it's just an influence of power and authority that creeps in, that kind of clouds the way that they really should be looking at what government should and shouldn't do and how to make things better for consumers and taxpayers and people.
We're talking with Casey Copeland. He's a Libertarian candidate for District 80. Tell us about the geographic boundaries of District 80. Whereabouts is that?
Well, it is basically all of western Washington County and down into northwestern Crawford County. The cities that it includes are Prairie Grove, Lincoln, and Cedarville, and then all the small little communities and
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
If you're not doing anything and you're in the Little Rock area and you want to maybe I don't know, go to a committee meeting. I know it sounds maybe boring, but I think it might be very, very interesting. The Medicaid subcommittee of the Legislative Joint Auditing Committee is meeting at 9 a.m. today. And what's interesting here is the vice chair of that subcommittee is Senator Linda Collins Smith, and the chair of that subcommittee is State Representative Dan Sullivan on the House side. The chair on the Senate side is David Sanders. This is interesting. They have been trying to get answers out of DHS about a lot of things, about software, redeterminations. I know that they want the head of DHS, Cindy Gillespie, to actually appear and answer some questions about some, well, let's just say there's a lot to answer for. I'm going to wait and see what actually happens, and we can get into specifics, and we'll report on that at a later date. But they are reviewing the Department of Human Services corrective actions for things that they haven't been doing, review of statewide single audit findings presented back in April. They want to review of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services correspondence, meaning what are the feds telling you? Why are they telling you certain things? I just have a feeling if you were a fly on the wall and you had to be somewhere at the Marble Palace, to me it's not a very pleasant environment. I'm not a fan. But if you had to be somewhere, I would stop by at 9 a.m., Committee Room A in the MAC building, a Medicaid subcommittee of the Legislative Joint Auditing Committee. Because it's your government trying to hold agencies accountable that are tasked with managing a lot, because government keeps growing, right? There's always an excuse to grow government. There never seems to be. There's always an excuse not to shrink government. I'll tell you that much. Okay, so that's all the time we have for today. I appreciate you guys listening. Go to conduitnews.com. For stories throughout the day. That's conduitnews.com. The brand new website is up and running, functional. We appreciate you guys so much. You make it possible. And we'll see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So don't miss the broadcast tomorrow. Feel free to go to conduitnews.com. Get the podcasts. Get the video archives. iTunes, SoundCloud. We try to make ourselves as available as we can. And Arkansas, thanks so much. Be safe.